Yeah. Yeah. So you're still, everything's still works.
Not everything.
And it's actually on the outside of the stone
You know,
wall that in the
more things you
enclosure,
put on
we
land.
call it pin bearing. But it supports the end of that shaft. And the reason it got extended into that wall,
A lot of our,
there was at
this
one
corner
point in
here
time
is
a big
pretty
gas
static.
engine that powered the mill. They'd done away with the water power, the steam was no longer being used because they had reliable World War II surplus engines available. So they bought an engine, the Pizzas put in gas power. And even electric power eventually was used, because this place stayed in business until 1965. So it had a long lifespan of business here for the community, and you know, they just got to the point where it was hard to compete. Watch your head here on this beam. You're tall. So if you look forward here, the water wheel, it's not a very photogenic piece of equipment. It's black and it just has those fins on the front of it, but it does make the place come alive when water is pouring over it. Have you been anywhere to see a working water wheel?
Yes.
Some of you have? Yeah. So it's pretty amazing. It's a Fitz overshot water wheel that was partially refabricated in the early 70s by the museum. It had become quite rusted from sitting there, but in fact, water wheel, there was probably a wooden wheel of some sort there originally in 1846. We know that they've moved into using turbine power, which is the same thing. They were called water wheels in the day, but their turbines configured a little differently. Has anybody seen a turbine working? Okay, well, we have one of those here too. We'll walk over by that next. There's a flume pipe that runs right over to the turbine. We know they had eventually 3 turbines in here. Mr. Hanford probably put in 2 of the 3, I believe, turbines for power, doing away with the early wooden water wheel. Now the turbines were beginning to get a little worn. The advent of maybe the sons taking over the business and so on, they finally got steam power by 1881. They got their first little steam engine, similar to that one over there, the bottle engine, across the side there. So they were still using their turbines, but they also started making use of steam power. The steam, as they say, was king. You could operate more year-round. A little engine like that you could buy out of the Montgomery Ward catalog. They got that engine, and then they got a little bit bigger one in 1888, similar size though, I mean. And then they went right up to a nice big engine that could power the entire mill, not just sections of it. And by then they'd phased out their turbine or water power completely. Went along greatly with that for a while, but the problem with water, it is the universal solvent. It will dissolve anything given enough time. And water on metal, you get rust and you get, you know, the oxidation problems. So in the boiler, it was beginning to get those kinds of pitting and problems that you get. It becomes dangerous when it gets to that point. Inspections of boiler go way back. Hartford steam boiler were a bunch of engineers that got together and said, let's find out why all these boilers are blowing up, and let's try to implement some rules and regulations so that people will operate them safely and avoid the same mistake that somebody else made. So, you know, that goes back. So the Hanford boiler was being inspected regularly, as it was by law. And by 1926, they were told that they couldn't, they had to downgrade their boiler and could only operate at 60 pounds pressure, which meant they could still run some of the equipment, but the big head saw and the molder and other machinery, that's not enough pressure. So they had to do something. What do you think they did? Anybody had any ideas of what they might have done to overcome that problem?
What year?
1926.
Gasoline?
Well, they could have gone to gas.
Or diesel.
The economy, right, the economy was kind of slow. That's when they brought in the Fitz overshot wheel. And they were available, they were steel, they were efficient, more efficient supposedly than the wooden ones, and well, that makes sense. And so they had it specs as to what size they would need for the pond. The pond was re-dredged back out probably by then. I'm sure it was starting to fill in. So they brought it back to life. So now the water power could supplement the steam power. If they had plenty of water, they probably didn't even bother to fire the steam engine. But we actually have been able to demonstrate using the two together. We intentionally had 60-pound steam pressure to see what would happen. And sure enough, even a small log, you wouldn't want to necessarily try to saw. So we crack open the water wheel just a little bit, and the two together works beautiful. Just takes a lot of coordination.
I think they still work shaken, well.